I am live. I am reading The Laird and the Lady. It is a book by Joan Marshall Grant. She was an author of largely books about her previous incarnations. But this one is a book which she wrote as fiction. It starts in a French chateau and was published in 1949. And I am now in the second part of the book, where the lady meets grandmother, Rowan's grandmother. Chapter 4, The Laird's Room. And so we got married in Paris, Rowan sitting beside Georgina on the edge of a cucumber frame in the kitchen garden waited for her to speak. She had deliberately avoided any mention of the weeks he had spent away from Cloud, until he had found the suspense unbearable and blurted out his story like a schoolboy, making lame excuses for the last terms report. "How romantic," she said. "It reminds me of one of the novels the under housemaid used to lend me when I was 14. They had highly coloured paper covers and cost 9 pence. I found them absorbing, which may have been because they were a privilege of the servants' hall, like strong tea in the middle of the morning, but strictly forbidden in the schoolroom. Romance has quite a respectable literary tradition. Mallory probably didn't feel he was cozening the back stairs when he wrote Mort d'Azur. But of course, I think it's so brave of you to flaunt convention. What on earth does it matter that the people here are bound to the little disappointed that they couldn't come to your wedding? We must find an excuse for a party for them. Sports, perhaps, and a bonfire, as we had for the Jubilee." You mean I ought to have married Marylda here? That we should have waited until a respectable quote of presents had been received?" She patted his knees. "I think that, under the circumstances, you acted very wisely. Marylda is your wife and will be accepted as such. No one will be so impertinent as to inquire into her antecedents. If they do, you can be sure I will make it clear that I find their morbid curiosity distasteful." "You still find it difficult to accept a grandmother-in-law that you didn't choose?" "My dear, what business of mine is it whom you marry? I only want you to be happy. You can't blame me for regretting that you couldn't find your happiness in the way everyone expected. There's something very reassuring about a boy and girl relationship which ripens into marriage." "You mean Jeanette?" "Who else? If you had been more frank with me, I shouldn't have cherished the hope of having her for the mother of my grandchildren. But you always seem to so pleased to see her." "I'm very fond of Janet," he said defensively. "But fondness isn't enough. It should teach me not to think I'm discerning, for I could have sworn you were on the brink of a proposal." "And so I was," said Rowan with unintentional honesty. "I didn't expect to find what you are pleased to call romance. I thought marriage was no more than another stage of friendship, a good solid background of living, but nothing magical. Oh, Georgina, can't you understand?" The appeal in his voice touched her more than she liked to admit. "I know that it is impossible and somehow faintly disgusting for the young to believe that their elders have ever been in love," she said in a voice that, curiously, was unlike her usual decisive tones. "But I'm not entirely inexperienced." "Then you must be glad that I haven't missed the real thing." "Why should I be? It is unnatural to wish to protect your young from being hurt. Is it unnatural to wish to protect your young from being hurt?" "But loving doesn't hurt." "My dear child, oh my dear child, how wonderful to be able to say that with such confidence." "So you were hurt, Georgina? I didn't know." "It doesn't matter any longer. There are advantages in being a tough old woman of 67. One has acquired a certain fortitude." She blew her nose. with unnecessary violence. It is ridiculous to be sentimental at my age. Give me a cigarette. I left my case at the breakfast table. For a few minutes, they smoked in silence. Now, Rowan, she said briskly, you've got to be honest with me, and if I ask you a straight question, you might give a straight answer and not explode into one of your Highland tempers. Fair enough. Shoot. You may recall that on a few occasions when you've made an ass of yourself and had the courage to be frank with me, I've always helped you to get out of it. Like the time I was caught shooting salmon with an A-22. Exactly. And the even more discreditable occasion when you put gunpowder in the French master's tobacco at your prep school and blew off his moustache. I had to grovel and provide substantial compensation to prevent you being expelled. The incident was still vivid. The small boy who had been locked in a box room and told that he was going to be sent to prison and probably hanged if his victim died. And then Georgina had arrived and everything was suddenly all right. You are a wonderful ally, Georgina. And an uncomfortable enemy. You mean that too, though you are sufficiently civil not to say so. And you are as nervous as a cat on hot bricks because you can't make up your mind which side I'm on. At times, you display an uncomfortable perspicacity, which is tiresome of you, for I thought I was carrying off a tricky situation with admirable savoir-faire. You wouldn't be a cadre if you didn't. At least none of you lack what your generation inelegantly refers to as guts. Tradition maintains that Evan made the devil so nervous that he sent him to St. Peter, who is still trying to win back his halo at dice. However, why did digress? Why, agreed Rowan. Face facts and alter them if they don't come up to your expectations. If you make a fool of yourself, admit it. This is not a discussion on abstract philosophy. Now, no tempers. They don't impress me and are a waste of time and energy. It was a new experience to find Georgina hedging, and Rowan began to enjoy himself. Are you trying to suggest, most honoured grandmother, that I fell victim to the demands of my lower nature and then behaved like a little gentleman and married the girl? Exactly, said Georgina, relieved to have been spared the necessity of stating her case so bluntly. You married where other men would not have thought it necessary. However, it's not irrevocable. You mean if I wish to divorce Marylda, you will put no obstacle in my way? Relieved, she failed to notice the dangerous calm in his voice. Exactly. Thank goodness you're going to be sensible. Old Andrews is a fool. We must get a competent lawyer from Edinburgh. Unfortunately, Scottish law observes the decencies. You can be free in 6 weeks. There is, however, a snag, said Rowan. Because you were married in France? Must be a way round that. We'll get the best opinion and be damned to the fee. The snag, said Rowan, slowly and deliberately, is that I happen to be in love with my wife. If anyone tries to come between us, it will be most unfortunate. If any snivelling little lawyer tries to poke his ferret face into our affairs, I shall have extreme satisfaction in splitting open his pot belly, drawing out his intestines and strangling him with them. I make myself clear? Perfectly, said Georgina. I thought this was to be a friendly discussion. Marriage is obviously beneficial. You have kept your temper. He laughed, and the sound nearly convinced them both. So now you know I'm not the innocent victim of a woman's wiles. We can start talking sense. The trouble with you is that those paper-backed 9 pennies gave you ideas about svelte enchantresses in tight black satin who compromise innocent young men who venture abroad. Why did you make up your mind I must be rescued from Matilda? He said it tightly in an attempt to skirt the sharp edge of a quarrel they both wished to avoid, and was unprepared for further revelations. It is difficult to remain calm when you see a pattern apparently repeating itself. We agreed on honest question and answer. If you find me embarrassing, at least give me credit that I would have continued to keep my mouth shut, unless I believed it would be sheer cowardice not to speak. You know that your grandfather married twice? Rowan nodded. Surely Georgina wasn't going to bring up that old story about Hector's disastrous marriage with an American as an excuse for mistrusting Marylda? Could he stop her by pointing out that this was his first morning at home, that he wanted to introduce his wife to everyone on the place, to share Cloud with her? But Georgina spoke with a sincerity that even made him forget that Marylda must be lonely without him. So that was the end of chapter 4. The chapter 5 is The Bridesmaid.